Last year I decided to play through the latest survival horror remakes. These modern takes on old classics have received universal praise and recognition, but as I revisited them, I caught myself thinking, I miss games with fixed camera angles. When we think about gaming and camera angles, most modern games typically use a third-person perspective or a first-person view. In both cases, the player has full control of the camera. They have the freedom to look anywhere at any time. However, games with fixed camera angles intentionally restrict that freedom. In the early 90s, games were transitioning from the two-dimensional space into 3D. 3D gaming was still a new concept, and the processors in consoles and computers were fairly weak. They didn't have enough power to render fully 3D environments in real time. Many developers took a creative approach to this challenge. Instead of consistently rendering backgrounds and environments as the camera moved, they used pre-rendered backgrounds and fixed camera angles, which allowed them to control exactly what the player saw. This saved processing power, allowing them to focus on the visual details of the game. There was also a physical limitation. Today, most consoles controllers have two analog sticks, one for the movement and the other one for controlling the camera. Back then, controllers primarily relied on tank-style controls. There wasn't a way to independently control the camera. The fixed camera perspective is mostly well known for its use in survival horror games. The first 3D survival horror game was Alone in the Dark, a truly groundbreaking title for its time. It featured 3D graphics, puzzle solving, and an inventory management system. The developers pushed the boundaries of early 3D technologies to create a horror experience, but due to technical limitations, they couldn't fully animate the entire mansion. Instead, they used fixed camera angles creatively to enhance the sense of realism and give the game a more cinematic feel. Ironically, this technical limitation actually improved the gameplay. Each camera angle was carefully chosen to build tension. As a player, you're never sure what's lurking just around the corner. Limiting what the players can see plays a significant role in creating suspense. When you don't know what's lurking just beyond your line of sight, it creates tension and makes you more cautious before moving forward. Alfred Hitchcock used to believe that true horror comes not from what you see, but from the fear of the unknown. The game that truly defined this was Resident Evil. It was the first survival horror game to master the art of suspense with its movie-like use of fixed camera angles. Each camera shot was meticulously placed, carefully thought out like a cinematic scene, and not to mention the brilliant use of the foreground, as if an unseen force was watching over Jill or Chris, heightening the sense of dread. Resident Evil set the standard for survival horror and fixed camera angles. Its success inspired countless developers, and I believe that it might be one of the most influential games ever made.
Buenos días.
Fixed camera angles also played a significant impact in various other genres, particularly adventure games, which remained very popular until the early 2000s. I've always felt that adventure and survival horror games share a similar DNA, not just in their focus on puzzles and explorations, but also in their visual presentation through fixed camera perspectives. Fixed camera angles were also a staple in 3D platformers. Iconic games like Crash Bandicoot use this technique to a great effect. One unforgettable moment is when Crash runs away from a boulder. This level is clearly inspired by the Indiana Jones movies, and choosing the same camera perspective was the right decision by the developers. In the recent Indiana Jones game, the developers opted for a first-person view. While this works well for the most of the game, the sequence where you run away from the boulder is arguably its weakest moment. It just doesn't compare. The original Final Fantasy VII also used fixed camera angles. Depending on the location, the camera will shift dynamically. The game featured a brilliant art design for its time, with pre-rendered backgrounds that brought an incredible level of detail for 1997, all with virtually no loading screens. This created the illusion of a vast, cohesive world. For its time, Final Fantasy VII was a massive game, and the fixed camera perspective allowed the developers to push through the hardware limitation of the time. Square Enix continued this style for all mainline Final Fantasy games all the way till Final Fantasy X. Action games can also benefit from fixed camera angles, especially in fast-paced combat scenarios with large numbers of enemies on screen. In these situations, a carefully chosen camera angle not only improves clarity, but also enhances the experience by delivering cinematic visuals that heighten the intensity of every encounter. Personally, my favorite example of fixed camera usage is the original God of War trilogy, which creatively employed this technique to establish a cinematic experience throughout the gameplay. David Jaffe, the director of the God of War, believed that allowing players to control the camera would add unnecessary complexity to the chaotic battles. Instead, the team decided to use fixed camera angles throughout the entire game, carefully selecting perspectives that highlighted the epic scale of the battles while eliminating the distraction of manual camera control. The camera dynamically flies and fluidly adjusts based on creator's position, always selecting the most cinematic angle for each encounter. Many studios, including Capcom, have moved away from fixed camera angles, even in remakes of classics like Resident Evil 2. While these modern adaptations are undeniably excellent, I can't help but wish there was more effort to preserve this unique and nearly lost approach to game design. Despite most major studios moving away from fixed camera angles, some developers are still fully embracing this technique, thanks in large to the thriving indie development scene. Independent survival horror games are reviving fixed camera perspectives, adapting them to modern controls. There are also modern games that use fixed camera angles just in specific parts. Most of the game the camera behaves like a normal third-person camera with player's control, but at specific parts the angle dramatically shifts. For example, Sifu. It sometimes switches to a fixed camera perspective angle to create cinematic moments that feel straight out of a classic martial arts movie. Fixed camera angles can truly make or break a game. Players used to modern first-person or third-person perspectives. Diving into a game with fully fixed camera angles can feel clunky or even awkward. But I believe there is a certain lost beauty in the fixed camera perspective. Something unique and artistic that deserves appreciation. What do you think? Do you enjoy games with a fixed camera perspective, or do you prefer it when it's reserved for special standout moments? Let me know your thoughts, I'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this video, feel free to like or subscribe. Either way, I hope you're having an amazing day.